I think we start. I'm waiting for music. I'm waiting for something. Anyway, I'm thrilled to be here with Curtis Sliwa. Everybody knows that name, of course, forever and ever. And tonight, what we are going to do is talk about, all kinds of things, but some of the things that have been on people's minds. First of all, I want to say, I know Curtis for, decades and decades and decades. And I'm supporting him. I'm very proud to support him. And I know who he is as a person. Now, we have some issues, and we're going to talk about it tonight. Some things he said in the past, we're going to deal with it tonight. But I got to tell you, Curtis Sliwa has always been there for the Jewish community. It's that simple. I mean, he shows up to things that we care about in the streets of New York and beyond when he's not invited. Curtis is here because he reads about it, he cares, and he shows up and he wants to show his support. He shows up, guardian angels. Always, this is the story of Curtis Sliwa being there. I mean, how many times have I turned around? Curtis is here. Curtis is here. And that is just a fact of life that literally hundreds, thousands by now, when we are in trouble in the Jewish community, who's the guy that you see? Who's the guy that shows up? Who's the guy that tries to help? Okay, it's Curtis. And he's not, like the mayor, the governor, or anything like that. Where you should be there because politicians show up and they tell you, and they all tell you they're against anti-Semitism, and they go home and nothing happens, right? Basically, nothing happens. So tonight, I'm delighted to be with Curtis. Right next to him, I don't think I've ever been that close to you, Curtis.
No.
Am I safe?
No, but
Am I safe?
Yes, because we're in a broadcast facility. And as you know, that's what I've been involved with for 35 years, broadcasting on radio.
Exactly. Listen, it's sort of strange. I did this for 15 years every Saturday night at one point, and I loved it. But you've been, it's strange for me to be asking you questions and so on, but it's great. First thing I want to start with, which is what everyone is talking about, it's the headlines, and that is the amazing accomplishment as of now in the Middle East.
Yes.
I mean, the possibility the 20 hostages may be out by Monday, Tuesday, that the fighting could end, and so on and so forth. Any feelings watching this? There's a lot of euphoria. Sometimes I feel, maybe we should take a step back and just wait for some of it to unfold to see what happens. Any feelings on it?
Yeah, because if you look at it, I'm looking at it as a Gentile from the outside, where I saw such a turn of events October 7th, 2 years ago. All of America, all of New York City was supporting Israel, supporting the Jews. A small minority were opposed. And then within the juxtaposition of just 2 years, everything seemed to turn completely around, where Israelis and Jews were being vilified and Palestinians and Hamas were being exalted. I've never seen such a dramatic turn of events. And then for the President of the United States to really get focused, Donald Trump, put together this massive peace plan that's good for everybody. And now, as you said, now we'll see if Hamas abides by what they've signaled, that they're agreeing to return the hostages, the bodies. They haven't agreed to lay down their arms yet, but that may well come about in the attempt to put Gaza all back together again.
If this happens, this will be incredible, extraordinary. I mean, forget about Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, Trump should have won that after the Abraham Accords. But if this happens on any level, it is something spectacular. Just an hour ago, took a look at this story Scary poll in the United States. 55% of Jews experienced anti-Semitism. 55%. That means 1 out of every 2 people has had an experience of different levels. And then it says nearly 1 in 5 experience an assault, threats, or verbal harassment. The first thing I want to deal with before we get to some of the things from the past, everyone, as I said before, all my life, I never met anyone who's for anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Even Mamdani is against anti-Semitism. Yeah. Everybody is against anti-Semitism, even those causing anti-Semitism and responsible for anti-Semitism. So everybody talks about it. When incidents happen, this guy shows up and that guy shows up, and then a day later it's forgotten and nothing happens. When you are the mayor of New York, knowing the things that we're talking about, this study of 55% of Jews experiencing anti-Semitism. And look, we know it. I talk to people, they take off their yarmulke, they remove their Star of David, they do everything in the world when they go into Manhattan not to be identified as a Jew, which everyone should be proud. You shouldn't take anything off. That's the worst thing you can do. The enemy wins when you do that. You're the mayor of New York.
Yeah.
You're elected. What would you do? I mean, in a very real way that could potentially, let's be realistic. No one is going to solve the problem by making a speech. It's got to be a lot more than that. What would Curtis Sliwa do as the mayor of the city of New York, knowing that things are basically out of control?
Well, there's a long term and a short term. The short term is we see the demonstrations. They just occurred the other day on October 7th, right along 6th Avenue. And the rabble-rousers came. They were covered. Their face was covered. They were singing again in rhyme, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Basically saying all the Jews should be pushed into the sea. So make it on your last flight out of Ben Gurion to Boca Raton, the 6th borough of the city of New York, or you'll be pushed into the sea. That's the way I translate it. And there was no coordination of the police, not because they didn't want to, but they've been prevented from doing it. I don't think people realize that there was a day and a time where you could get a permit for any demonstration at one police plaza. You've been involved. I've been involved. 1 day turnaround. Audio, 1 day turnaround. You're in a bullpen area, a designated area. You don't leave the area and start parading around. And then you have a time limit, maybe 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and then that's it. Everybody goes home. That ended when Bill de Blasio became mayor. People started rampaging through the streets. And then when October 7th occurred, and remember, the next day, October 8th, the DSA called their members into Times Square. Who was there? Assemblyman Zoran Mandami. Proudly, AOC avoided that, but he was there.
Let's emphasize that, because Mamdani has a very nice smile.
Yes.
And that could fool you very easily. He has a nice smile, he talks nice. But let us remember, the day after 1,200 people were massacred, butchered, raped, babies burned alive. I was there 2 days after that in Kfar Darom, in Sderot, and other places. The horrors I cannot describe in the kind of detail that I'm familiar with, okay? The next day, Curtis is telling you Mamdani was there in the streets. In the streets. Why? Why was he there in the streets? Israel hadn't yet bombed Gaza into the dirt, right? No. The thing was just starting. Why would Mamdani be in the streets supporting Hamas?
I thought that day his political career was over. Even AOC distanced herself, said, no, that's not the DSA I'm a part of. Not Zoran Mandami. But I learned about Zoran Mandami, Dov, a long time ago. As you know, I raised 2 boys with Melinda Katz. Moderate, Democrat, Jewish woman who went on to become Assemblywoman, city council person, head of land use, borough president, was running for the seat of the district attorney, Brown, who had passed away.
Right.
One-on-one race with a woman that nobody knew, Tiffany Caban. She hadn't even yet been elected to city council. And on election night, Melinda Katz lost. If it hadn't been for 3,000 absentee ballots that saved her, she won by 12 votes. The person I saw out in the streets organizing for Tiffany Cabana was Zohran Mamdani. He's an organizer. He knows how to get people riled up and out into the streets. And on that day of October 8th, he used his organizing skills. I'm sure it wasn't easy to get a big crowd in Times Square. And yet, through connections and obviously having run demonstrations before, the day after the mayhem, the slaughter, the rapes, the hostage taking, there were people there supporting Hamas.
Right.
In fact, remember that famous photo in the New York Post? Two women who were wearing a chadora were flashing a Nazi sign on a cell phone. And you said to yourself, oh my God, I can't believe that anybody would do this. And I never thought that his political career would survive that. It not only survived it, it thrived to the point he's on the cusp now of possibly being elected the next mayor of the city of New York. So having gone from what I was sure was the outhouse of politics to potentially City Hall and Gracie Mansion. And notice, he has not changed his ways. Most other politicians would have morphed. That's been AOC. She's morphed her positions. Not Zohran Mamdani. He is a zealot. He is an ideologue.
By the way, I think he's incredibly committed, more than a lot of other candidates, more than people like Cuomo. Cuomo, you can't figure out what he believes because he himself doesn't know exactly what he believes. It depends on the day of the week. Everybody knows that about Cuomo. And the thing about Mamdani is the fact, I got to tell you, when you call someone an anti-Semite in the past, they try to explain to you why they're not, and they'll do a whole routine to tell you they're really a good guy. Okay, in the case of Mamdani, he has stood by everything that he believed from day one when he started running, a year before, 2 years before. This guy's for real. This guy is a radical supporter of radicalism, of murderers. It's that simple. It's I'm not mincing words. To me, it's, for those who know me, it's never about politics. I mean, I see it so clearly. This guy with his smile and the way he presents himself, God has fooled so many good people. He will destroy the city. There is no question about that. So, Curtis, a little more about the Curtis plan to change things in terms of the anti-Semitism.
Well, let me talk long-term first, because both Eric Adams had his opportunity as mayor and control of the Department of Education that spends $41 billion a year. Likewise, Andrew Cuomo, when he was governor, before he fled to the Hamptons fearing impeachment, he was in control of the state budget, huge budget, Department of Education. There's no mandatory training about the history of the Holocaust. There's no training about what anti-Semitism is, the history of it, and the danger of it. I have 3 boys who went to public school, and I've questioned them, especially my youngest, who just entered Townsend High School, pretty good high school in Queens. That's Hunter. Hunter, do they teach you current events there? No, Daddy. Why not? They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I remember in Bill C. Junior High School, Mr. Lerner, our history teacher, bringing in from audio one of those old broken down black and white TVs, and we were watching the potential invasion of Israel by Egyptian tanks, Syrian tanks, Jordanian tanks. It looked like Israel was caught in a vice. And that's when Richard Nixon came to their aid, remember? And immediately, even against the wishes of his Secretary of State Kissinger, sent supply plane in after supply plane. And obviously, the IDF and the Israelis were able to turn the tide. We watched it on TV.
Right.
Now, I'm sure in that class, there were probably kids whose parents were not at all in favor of Israel, because there's always been anti-Semitism. But Mr. Lerner said, this is history taking place now. Regardless of what they tell you outside of this classroom, I'm going to teach you the history of Israel, how people came from Europe after the Holocaust, and I'm going to also teach you about the Arabs who lived in that area too. Boy, I come out of Bill C. Junior High School, and I had the full meal. Nowadays, it won't let you do that. Children are not being taught, historically so. If we mandate Holocaust teaching about the Holocaust, which is, I mean, you look at it, you're horrified, and then the dangers of anti-Semitism, and you got to do it before fourth grade. You must do it before fourth grade because kids can't even read at grade level in fourth grade. 2/3 can't write, 2/3 can't do arithmetic. You got to inculcate it early on so that it lasts with them for years. Now, Cuomo never did it because you get a lot of blowback, and Adams never did it. You get a lot of blowback.
Yeah.
But that's long term because I believe that anti-Semitism starts at the dinner table and in the living room of the homes of people who are repeating what they were told by their parents or grandparents through the generations.
You know, one of the things you've said that, raised eyebrows, I understand it. You talk about, the Gentiles are basically have that little bit of anti-Semitism blood. Do you want to explain that a little bit? Because you're talking about, look, some of our worst enemies are Jews.
Yeah.
And you know that.
Yeah.
22% of Mondani's vote in the primary were Jews, young Jews who voted for him, who voted for this radical supporter of Hamas. Exactly. And some of our best friends, including yourself, and all over the country are Christians, evangelicals. They are the greatest friends of Israel. So can you explain a little more of that remark about, it's in the blood?
Oh, yeah. I remember I was at the Trump rally in Staten Island before his victory over Harris, and a group that was there reporting from Israel came up to me, and we got into a very deep discussion about the roots of anti-Semitism. And I said, it's in a lot of people, a lot of Gentiles' DNA. At times I feel myself, having flashbacks about things that I was being told at a young age.
I'll give you an example.
Well,
In your own home you're talking
right,
about?
my own home. Luckily, my father and mother were very much like Unitarians.
Okay.
So they shielded me. But I had uncles. I had won a history contest at PS 114, and I went on to compete for the Brooklyn Championship at Brooklyn College. Right. I finished second. Only because I got all the questions correct because it was choice. I didn't have to know it. I was multiple choice. I got lucky. So I thought I was Mr. Big Stuff. Another kid in the class, Ira Breskin, my friend, studied hard. He went to library after school. He discovered the computer at that time, which was microfilm. And I was out there playing ball with my cousins, running around. So at the end of the year, in the graduation ceremony, Ira Breskin got the History Award. I was just devastated. So I came home, and all of my uncles, Italian uncles, not really into education. They were the type to say, what are you reading books for?
What part of the city was this?
This was Brooklyn, Canarsie, half Italian, half Jewish at the time. Italians and Jews always got together and got along. But suddenly they're telling me, Curtis, it's not you. What do you mean, Uncle Vincenz? What do you mean, Uncle Ralphie? What's the name of your teacher? Well, we call her Jungle Jenny Wilson. Is she Jewish? Yeah. Ira, he's Jewish, right? Yeah. Well, he probably picked his ear, his nose, they made some signals, and that's it. You were on the outside looking in. I'll never forget that. You were on the outside looking in. Now, I wanted to believe that. So my father's listening to this.
Did you believe it at that point?
Yes, of course, because I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe, I was cheated. I was cheated by a Jewish cabal of sorts.
Always better to blame someone if you're not doing, whatever it is you want to accomplish. Hey, it's the Jews.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much, it's the Jews.
So my father, merchant seaman, he heard some of this, and he sits me down once my uncles left, because they had pigeons on the roof. They were taking care of the pigeons. He said, let me tell you something, Curtis. You used to study a lot. And then all of a sudden, you're hanging out with your Supreme Cuisine cousins, playing baseball. Well, that's all fine. But Ira, I know Ira. He's doing extra credit reports. He's going to the library. You're not studying with him anymore. He deserved that award. He got it because of meritocracy.
Right.
He earned it. And I was shamed. But if I didn't have a father like Chester, who was Polish, or my mother, Francesca, who would balance me, I could have easily moved in that direction and believe that every time I was deprived of something because some Jewish kid did better than me, it was because it was a Jewish cabal.
Let me ask you a question, Curtis. What is this phenomena of blaming the Jews? What is that all about? And it goes back historically, thousands of years ago, and through the Holocaust and through this day, whatever it is, you blame the Jews. The Jews are responsible. What is that all about?
There are reasons that are used. Like when I was young, I went to St. Matthew's Elementary School, which was up by Eastern Parkway and Utica Avenue. Now, the Lubavitch were just starting to move in, but it was Reformed Jews mostly. And I remember being told, now, the nuns, I mean, they're all dedicated. They're married to Jesus Christ. They actually have rings.
Right.
And I mean, they live a Spartan life. Unlike the priests, who are very ostentatious. You walk in their rectory. They got Rolexes on, submarine Rolex.
I didn't know that, really.
Nuns live a very pious
No, that
life.
I know, yeah.
So the nun, we would look at the cross of Jesus Christ. See, Catholics, Jesus Christ is on the cross, bloodied and gory. Protestants, it's just a cross. So we would ask, who did that to Jesus? The Pharisees. We didn't know what Pharisees were. And then the nun, Sister Ruth, I remember in first grade, would say, well, the Jews. You see, like out there. Now, the black hats and the black coats were there. The Lubavitch were just coming in. In that area, they were starting to develop, get stores, buy buildings, move families in. And so we were told this, don't go down that block when you see somebody with a black hat and a black coat, because they may snatch you up and your mother may not see you any longer because you'll end up on a plate in their home.
Oh, my God.
The old blood libel.
Wow.
Now, these are nuns, right? You're trusting the nun. They're pious.
Right. These are the people you're looking up to and respected.
But they were taught.
They were there.
These were Irish nuns, Josephite nuns. I love them all. They were great. But I know that had to be programmed into them, probably through the centuries. And they just carried on the tradition. Now, that's no longer the tradition.
Right.
But in 1960, remember, we were being told, you better make sure your parents vote for John Kennedy versus Richard Nixon, or your parents will be excommunicated from the church.
Right.
It was tribal. It was very religious. And Jews were looked upon as the chosen people. So we were told, why do they think they're the chosen people? What do they think? They're better than us? And then others would feed that attitude. And yet, later on, obviously, chosen to carry the laws of God. You did all the heavy lifting. You got the double hernias. And we Gentiles, we truncated everything. You had over hundreds of commandments. We knocked it down to 10. So that's the way I explain it to groups. Yeah, the chosen people, they had to do they were lost 40 years in the desert. 40 nights, they suffered. They had the tough road. They led the way to Christianity. There would be no Christianity without Judaism.
Right. Let me get to some of the things that I want to make sure we deal with in the time we have left. You've been critical, allegedly. I've seen things, and I want to hear it directly from you, and I want to deal with it. Of yeshivas and of some yeshivas, I mean, obviously, in terms of the lack of education, the lack of secular education. And this is a major issue within a large part of that community where, if someone is attacking, it becomes a real issue. Let's get that clear right now, exactly where Curtis is now the mayor. Again, you are now the mayor.
Sure.
How comfortable can all the yeshivas feel in terms of, look, I know one thing you've said so many times. If there's anything that Jews respect and is fundamental to all Jews, and by the way, I think it's especially true with the very Haredi, the Borough Park, Williamsburg, from the very earliest age, kids are learning to read. It may not be English, but they are learning, they are studying, and so on and so forth. Let's get clear right now. You're the mayor. Do some yeshivas have a problem with Mayor Curtis Sliwa?
I wouldn't say they have a problem because I've been in so many yeshivas, most of them that are stellar. You know, the kids, they're learning 6 days a week. They don't have time to get into trouble. They're so tired from learning every day, and they're actually engaging the rabbis in conversation and questioning them, which even I couldn't do in Catholic school. You couldn't question the nun. You couldn't question the secular teacher. So I've observed the kind of training, which is great in the future. What I've seen sometimes is the inability of children to speak English well, to understand English, to write English. And I said, wait a second, they're so bright. They're learning so much, obviously, in Yiddish and Hebrew, but an inability to do that, I would have to say, hey, that's something you're going to need in growing up and in functioning here.
So would you say, Curtis, they can do better?
I think a little more focused. Look, you're spending close to 10 hours a day in school, 6 days a week.
Okay.
There should be a little bit of time. Now, I know there's certain subjects they don't want to expose the children to because of their religious, because of their family ways. I get that. They did the same thing to us in Catholic school. But I remember every year somebody would come down from the state and sit in the back room, and the note would tell us, there's going to be a gentleman here today who's here to make sure that we're covering subjects. Don't be worried about it. You know, I'm going to be teaching the lesson plan. It's what we have to do every year to be certified. So I'm just suggesting there is a meeting somewhere in between. You have to go yeshiva by yeshiva. It's just like all Catholic schools did not teach the same. All religious schools don't teach the same. But if they can't speak English, write English, understand English, to me, that's problematic. Because even I want the migrants who are here to be able to function by being able to speak, read, and write in English.
So let me ask a question. The public school system, if you look at the reading level, the writing level, how successful the Department of Education is in terms of students within the system forever.
Dismal.
You know, 36 years of the legislature, every single year, all we did was put more money into education. Forget about yeshivas, forget about all of that, okay? We want them to do better. But can we agree that if you're the mayor, first you make sure that the public school system is functioning?
Absolutely.
Forget about the yeshivas.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to school, they're studying all kinds of things. I mean, little kids are studying, 8, 9, 10 hours a day. What time do you go to school? I get picked up at 7 o'clock. What time do you finish? 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
You know what it reminds me of? I have guardian angels in Japan. It's what I first observed in Japan. So I'm with the guardian angels. We're on the subway in Tokyo, and I see children sleeping. And I think, what, homeless children? So my leader, Keiji Oda, says, no, they're so tired. Not only do they go to school, they go to cram school, after school, and maybe get home 9, 10 o'clock. And they were going to school all day Saturday. And then I figured it out. That's why so few Japanese kids get into trouble. And by the way, stable families, that's really a key. They didn't have...
And that the community that I'm talking about, that I represented for 36 years, very proudly, that, look, there are problems, there are issues.
Sure.
And I tackled things that were very controversial when I was in office. But basically, it's family.
Yes.
It's people being there for each other, the kindness, the generosity, the charity. Everybody gives charity. Even if you don't make money, you got to give charity. It's one of the most fundamental things. We just had Yom Kippur, and one of the most fundamental things we say that saves the world, that makes a difference in life, is giving charity. So that's huge.
Well, you know who's having the same problems now? The Chinese. Remember, during the summer of George Floyd, the lockdown and pandemic, all the Asian assault. Men and women were being assaulted simply for being Asian. Now, naturally, some of them were emotionally disturbed who were doing this, but a lot of people were doing it out of envy, out of jealousy, because they were being accused of what Jews have been accused of for years. They keep to themselves, they invest in themselves, they're favored in school, our kids are left out. Same arguments. When I went to school, there were caps on the number of Jews. So if you Jewish children were doing well, oh no, Sorry, they had a cap. You couldn't get into this special class or that special class. That's what's been happening to Asians, particularly Chinese. And I saw the same thing happening to them. They would get assaulted. They would be made fun of. They would be thugs would take advantage of them. And you say, what's the one thing that is similar? The focus on education. The continual education that you have to have in your young years, your formative years, because if you don't get it then, it's very difficult to catch up later on in life because you're going to have to make the right choices. When the road goes in two different directions, which choice are you going to make? If you've had an education, if you've had stability, you'll probably make good choices in your life.
Okay. Now I want to deal with an issue that I think it's the number one thing that bugs me, and again, like I said, I know you, I know who you are. I know where your heart is, your soul, and not only that, look, I've seen you all my life in the streets, being there for the Jewish people. And by the way, not just for the Jewish people. You've been there for people who need help, who need additional protection. There's a problem. Curtis and the Guardian Angels are there, period. End of the story. Back in, I think it was October 2018, Rockland County, Hudson Valley. Let me throw out some of the things and I watched the videos as well. Orthodox Jews are a drag on the tax system, and you warn suburban residents they are trying to take over the community. Here's one quote: many babies like no tomorrow, and who is subsidizing them? We are. They control the politicians because of their money. I mean, you got like five.
There was more.
Five biggies.
There was more.
Okay, okay. It's only an hour show.
Yeah, no,
but seriously, people, when they get an opportunity, I would say it's almost remarkable. Look, one incident is one incident too much in terms of anti-Semitism or racism. But it's remarkable that someone like you, Curtis, who's been on the radio, who's been out there for 30, 40 years, that you haven't gotten in more trouble. I don't get it. That I mean, in the sense that, when you're on and you talk from your heart and you say things, we sometimes say, oh, I should not have said that. That was a mistake. Look, it happens in our house. It happens with our wives, our husbands.
Of course.
I say something to the kids. What the hell did I say that for? Was that necessary? It's just painful. It may even be true, but did I need to say it? It's just not going to help, and it's not a good thing. Some of these things that I just mentioned now, and you can address that whole subject going, from October 2018. What was that all about? It wasn't the Curtis that I know.
No, it was a political battle. I was the chairman of the New York State Reform Party, and we were organizing in the area, Rockland and Orange County. And I was recruiting young men who were coming from the Orthodox communities to join the Reform Party. They were being ostracized by their communities because they have a block vote. We know that well. Oftentimes, they will commit to having their community, or at least
it's sort of like the Democratic Party.
Yes,
they've got a lot of block votes.
Exactly.
That's okay.
I was losing election after election.
If you had all the black votes, you'd be in great shape.
Exactly.
You wouldn't complain, right?
Last time Eric Adams got 90% of the black vote against me. That's why he got elected mayor.
Black votes is not a. If you can make it happen, great.
In the middle of a heated electoral process, I'm the chairman of the party, and I'm suing all these losses, and I can't make any headway, and I lost it. And I said things that I regretted. And I remember I came on with Zev Brenner, Talkline Communication, Saturday nights. Boy, he would play those tapes over and over. The callers, some would defend me and say, well, that's an exception to the normal rule of Curtis. Others, though, would say, wow, that was really... I would never have thought that you would say that.
Curtis, first of all, I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
It was a mistake. I was wrong. And are you apologizing?
Oh, I've apologized many times, and I apologize
clearly.
again.
But I want to go back to it.
Yeah.
It's not you. Where did that come from? That's what I want to know. You knew better.
Yeah. Frustration at that moment. And then obviously everything that I had learned over the years and whatever anti-Semitism I had been exposed to was all manifesting itself. Now, after it took place, and then I had a chance to look at it.
You must have been horrified.
No, I said, yeah, that was me. They weren't embellishing this. I really said that out of anger, out of frustration, because I was a loser there. You just don't do that. You lose, you lose. You come back, you reorganize, you try to win your next set of elections. That's the way the process has been there many years. As you mentioned, other groups are involved in block voting also. But I lost it, and I apologized, and I was asked to apologize again and again. Obviously, my political adversaries always drop that on me, even years later. That's fine. I am responsible for everything I've done in my life. You see, politically, it's interesting. Cuomo is responsible for everything he did as a teenager. That's fair. Eric Adams, me, but not Zoran Mandami. I remember Kathy Hochul saying nothing counts until he was sworn in as an assemblyman January 1st, 2022. I said, what are you talking about? All these tweets and texts and speeches he gave? No, that was youthful indiscretion. It's not youthful indiscretion. You're responsible for it now. The difference is, do you apologize? Do you try to make amends? I'll give you a quick example. Eric Adams had a relationship with Farrakhan many years ago. Is he an anti-Semite?
And I remember that.
You exposed that.
I remember that.
But
absolutely.
He's not an anti-Semite.
Right.
Andrew.
Let's stick to that for just a second, because people out there who have an agenda in the Jewish community, it's not. They know you're a good guy.
Yeah.
They know you've been there for everybody, but they don't care. You know, if they're supporting someone else and they can hurt you, they're going to do it. But you just said, I know that because I confronted, when Adams ran that time, I did not support him specifically for mayor. I raised with him. I had the stories for Farrakhan.
Yeah.
His relationship with, can you imagine Louis Farrakhan, probably the greatest anti-Semite up until that point, you know? And, and people support Adams. He probably won because of the Orthodox Jewish community.
Exactly.
They looked away, whatever. Well,
I'll give you an example. You know how important I and the Guardian Angels were to the Lubavitchers in Crown Heights during the riots, the pogrom. We stayed 30 days, 30 nights with them to protect them when others abandoned them.
Hey, listen, a lot of people listening, young people, they don't even remember any of that.
No.
We're talking about 35 years. Look,
Yes.
I was there. I wasn't there for the riot, but when I came back, I spent the next 2 years going after people, supporting Republicans because they were not there for the Jewish community.
But the
Guardian Angels were there. Curtis Sliwa was there, period, before he had a dream of running for any office,
But
period.
the interesting thing is when I met with the Lubavitch leadership, Rabbi Hecht, the rest, I said, we love you, Curtis. But Eric has been good to us. He was state senator. He was borough president. We're going to support him for mayor. I said, well, this is politics. He did serve the community. Now, he flirted with Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, like some African Americans have. But I've seen him with Jewish people. He's not an anti-Semite. Cuomo, during the lockdown and pandemic, said horrible things about Jews. He's not an anti-Semite.
I agree.
We've all had these episodes. I don't know what caused them to do that. But I know it caused me to erupt in that rage in which I said things that when I saw it and I heard it, I said, I actually said that.
You couldn't believe it.
Well, I really took myself to the shed, the woodshed, as they say, and said, man, got to be careful, Curtis. You're saying these things in anger, but it's a historical thing you're saying that's going to not only offend a lot of people, but I influence people. So people listen to me.
Right.
If Curtis is saying this must be true. So you got to go out there and undo that, and you got to apologize.
Yeah.
And I'll be probably apologizing. My middle
and
son.
can I tell you something, Curtis? The one thing I say about politicians, my entire life, politicians do not apologize.
No.
You are the exception. Cuomo apologized. He's so full of God. I don't want to use the words. He apologized right before the Day of Atonement. Like the Day of Atonement. the most important day for the Jewish people, he got in front of a mic. He said he was sorry that he singled out the Jews. And some people ran with that. Oh, you see, he apologized. 2 days later, he took it back, for God's sake. I mean, look at Yeshiva World that was busy going after you, right? But I mean, they killed Cuomo because he's so full of you-know-what. I mean, I know this man. He is so dangerous. This man is dangerous.
The worst thing for me in that ordeal, my middle son comes up to me because, they're all
Your
good.
kids are Jewish.
Yes.
You had a bar mitzvah.
Carter and Hunter, right?
Right, exactly.
My oldest son, Anthony, is now raised by Governor David Patterson and Mary, my previous wife. But my two youngest sons are raised Jewish. When I was living with Melinda Katz, they were going for Hebrew school, their training, and then obviously went to public school. So he says, Daddy, did you say this? Because of the children, Jewish children, said, your daddy said this? I didn't know how to answer my son.
Wow.
I said, son, sometimes we make mistakes in our life.
And how did they react?
It was difficult for him because he had seen that I had supported him in his religious studies. I didn't have arguments that he should be raised half and half. I knew he had to be raised Jewish. And I think he understood that this is what a man has to do. When you're wrong, you're wrong. We have a term in the street. When you mess up, you fess up. And that's what I had to do to my own son. Now, that was the most difficult thing of all, because nowadays they have access to this stuff, everything. So there are things they look at, they're proud of me. There are other things they're not so proud of me. And that was one of my darker days.
Yeah. Look, being able to say, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, in Judaism, isn't that what the Day of Atonement is all about? Isn't that what Rosh Hashanah is all about? You're standing there saying, Al Chait, Al Chait, Al Chait. You're knocking yourself for all kinds of stuff. I didn't do. That's what, and, your apology, like I said, politicians don't apologize.
No.
They find a way to explain and, beat around the thing, they didn't, whatever. But apologize? No, not politicians. Politicians do not do that. I don't know why. I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to. We're human. We're all human, for God's sake.
I think they see it as a sign of weakness, that if they apologize once, they'll have to apologize often. Dov, you've been married a long time. I've been married. I apologize 3 times a day to Nancy, in the morning, afternoon, and night. I'll say things, and she just brought to my attention something I said the other day at the Cranes Business Seminar. She said, you really said this? I said, yeah, that was pretty stupid, wasn't it? She said, why would you say that?
Yeah.
So apology is part of life. We all make mistakes, especially if you speak real fast and you're not processing, because a lot of politicians process, so their real feelings don't come out. They're sort of masking it. But
one thing about you, Curtis, and I want to emphasize this to everyone, you're the only real person running. I mean, when you speak, it's your heart speaking. Yep. When you express yourself, it's not a guy who's a politician figuring out, will this go? Can I say this? Should I not say this? You're very straightforward about things. And I think when you do that, you can run into trouble. But I've always seen you that way. You get on the radio for hours. You're dealing with the issues of the day. You speak like no one else in terms of, we call it tachlis, bottom line, and you've always done that.
It reminds me, when I first met your son, Yanni, who's been such a great part of our campaign, giving me a lot of guidance along with yourself. I was at that Fifth Avenue synagogue when they honored Sid.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
And I gave a fire and brimstone speech. And Yanni, when we came for Shabbos dinner, Yoni, I'm sorry. Yeah. I keep calling him Yanni.
Yeah.
Yoni.
By the way, do you know he's named after Yoni Netanyahu?
He is.
The commander of the Entebbe
Yes.
who was killed. We named him after that.
I remember that. Idi Amin, Uganda.
How many people know Idi Amin today?
Right.
Mandani does, by
That's
the
right,
way.
of course. So your son, remember, we were sitting after the meal, said, a lot of what you said could be perceived of as being anti-Semitic. But I get it, because a lot of it is tough love. It's like what I've told Jewish audiences since October 7th. I said, you have young people in your families that you have influence on, whether they're grandchildren, great-grandchildren, your own children, and you're not doing tough love, and they're coming home and they're talking, I saw this guy, Zorhan, on TikTok. Oh, he's so affable, he's so nice. You know what my father used to tell me, because I was a rebel in the 60s, don't trust anybody over 30, grow your hair long. I grew my hair long. I broke all the rules. My father would come home, merchant seaman, and say, as long as you're living in our house, under our roof, you're going to abide by our rules, or you can simply go out into the real world and see if you can survive. I find that Jewish families are unable, in many instances, to utilize tough love to sort of bring the family back in and say, do you know what the history of people like this is? You know what it's done to generations of our people? It's almost like we know the children know. We know they've been raised correctly, but they have to be reminded. And sometimes it comes through tough love. You know that vacation I paid for in Europe that you wanted to go to with your friend? You can forget that. Car payments, you're making the car payments. Oh, that college you wanted to go to that we had to take a loan out for you to go? You can forget that. How about paying for yourself if you're going to vote for this anti-Semite? I don't really hear much of that. So when I looked at the analytics, as you said, close to 25% of Jews voted, and they were young. I said, what were their parents or grandparents thinking?
Oh, God, you are so on target. How did this happen? These young people with these radical ideas of supporting our enemies, marching in the streets, we're their daddies and mommies. Probably most of them very successful, who were too busy maybe dealing with their kids. I'm serious. This is a question that we need to examine in our community. How did this happen, for God's sake? How did this happen?
Well, I don't often agree with AOC. To me, she's all out crazy, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But she said, this is a generational change. That's what happened in the 60s. Why would American youth be supporting the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong?
Right.
Why would Jane Fonda go to North Vietnam under a gun turret as if she was shooting John McCain down?
Right. While our soldiers were being killed and dying.
Right. Anti-war demonstrations, I get it. I participated in anti-war demonstrations as part of my counterculture days when I didn't trust anybody over 30. But it's a big difference supporting people who are killing your own. You don't blame the soldiers. You blame the government. The soldiers are just doing what it is the government has asked them to do. And sometimes they're doing it out of blind loyalty. They're loyal to the country, but we know how the politics can be. So having grown up in the 60s, having seen that, I deal with what I call the Zoronistas every day. I'm in their neighborhoods. I'm in Long Island City. I'm in Astoria. I'm in Brooklyn Heights. I'm in what they call Park Slope, Dumbo.
You're the only candidate that is everywhere.
Yes.
That goes into every single community, period. You don't care. Black, white, yellow, green, it doesn't matter. You are there. I want to ask you a question.
Yep.
Something I actually agree with you very, very much. You talk about Jews protecting themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Playing a role. It's nice to call the police and they come down and then they give you protection for 2 days. And like I said, the politicians come down and they all condemn and everybody's hugging and nothing changes, for God's sake. Nothing changes. It's worse than ever before. At the beginning of this show, I shared with you a shocking story that is just out. 55% of Jews experience anti-Semitism. And we're not talking about dirty Jew. We're talking about assaults. We're talking about fear. Curtis, this shocked me actually. Within this poll, 14% said they even devised an escape plan from the country if needed. 14% of Jews in this poll said they actually have worked out so they can escape. A lady called me up from Queens, an elderly woman, on my cell phone, total stranger. And she asked me the following question. How will we know when it's time to leave? I couldn't believe it. This elderly woman was concerned. She said, will someone notify us? By the way, that was before October 7th. Anti-Semitism was through the roof, and she wanted to know, is anyone going to tell us, okay, it's over? And now,
I'll
it's
tell you
crazy.
another story. Forest Hills, where I lived for a while, I went for a bagel and a schmear, and there were a bunch of older Jewish women there. I don't have a driver's license. I would used to use my passport as my identification. So I was showing somebody my identification, and they said, they didn't know I was Curtis Sliwa. Are you Jewish? Why you ask me I'm Jewish? Why are you carrying your passport with you? And then they told me the story of how they grew up in a household where the father and mother always had their papers on them, always had what little equity they had, whatever it was, in gold or whatever, and they would tell the children, at a moment's notice, we might have to leave. And they would always have their identification papers, in that case, the passport.
Absolutely. So Jews protecting themselves. I know we are great supporters, you and I, of the police department.
Yeah.
No question about it. They are amazing. They are the front line. But you can't completely depend on them. That's your message. Tell us a little.
Well, look, I've worked alongside a Shamrin and Shmira for years. I remember in Williamsburg when the gangs were coming over from the south side, Dirt and Roebling, and looking to take the hats of some of the Hasidim there with the beaver fur around.
Which are worth a lot of money.
Right, well, it was a trophy for them. But they beat down the Hasidim who were coming out of shul. And they would also do home invasions because on Friday nights when the Jews would go to pray, they thought, oh, all the money was inside. All these myths.
Wow.
So we were standing side by side with Shamrim. And that's when I learned the term hopsum.
Which means catch them.
Right. And I actually gave speeches at gatherings of Shamrim in Williamsburg. And I first saw the Maccabee Patrol in Crown Heights when I was going to school there, Brooklyn Prep. Some rabbi from Sao Paulo had created this. Across the street was Herbert Daughtry. You know, Reverend Daughtry.
Who, by the way, he was in all the pictures with Adams.
Yes.
People had no idea who that was. I know from the old days.
That was his mentor.
Bad guy.
Right. Bad. You know, his perception was the Jews were invaders in Crown Heights. So I saw what the Maccabee patrols were doing. And I got influenced by watching the Maccabees, the Lubavitch, patrolling their neighborhood because they were coming under attack, which eventually led me later on in life to say, I could do that with Guardian Angels. Obviously expand upon what Shamrim was doing. Shmira does a great job, but we need even more patrols. We have so few police now, 32,500. My plan is to hire 7,000 more cops. That won't happen overnight. In the meantime, I would encourage neighborhoods to have these volunteer patrols because when you're out in the streets, the bad guys and bad gals are going to know that they don't have the right of way, that there will be people there who will stop them from committing their crimes.
We're down to the last couple of minutes, and I just want to say to everyone out there, God, if everyone that I have met over the past 2-3 months, and they all say the same thing, I got to tell you, I have not met someone who says, I don't like Curtis. Curtis is not going to be good for us. They all say the same thing. I like Curtis, but he can't win. Can he win? They ask the question. This has been going on, forever. If all those people and all the people they represent would just say, we're for Curtis. We're for the guy that's been out there for us for decades and decades and decades. And Curtis will make a great mayor. He and I have discussed some of the amazing people that he would appoint to in education, in you name the field. He's got I'm sure they're going to announce it in the coming weeks, throw that out to the public. Curtis is a leader and a great leader like Ronald Reagan. He was a great leader. He's an actor in Hollywood. What can he do, right? Well, he was the governor of California, and he was one of our greatest presidents.
Well, look at two people who have backed me, like you, Dov. George Pataki,
Yeah, absolutely.
best governor we ever had in our lifetime. We had no chaos, no corruption, 12 years.
Solid.
And he beat the better Cuomo.
I remember. I was there.
Beat the better Cuomo.
I was there.
Remember, 2 days, November 2nd, 1994, he was 12 points down in the polls. 12, you got no chance for Pataki. Election night, he wins by 3%.
Right.
You can't trust the polls. Number 2, Rudy Giuliani this week.
Endorsed you.
With a broken back in Florida, endorsed me. He had been lobbied by people who knew Cuomo. Remember, he made the mistake of supporting Mario Cuomo against George Pataki when I was on the side of Pataki with Alphonse D'Amato and you, Dov Hikind.
Yes.
Those were brutal days. But Rudy didn't even hesitate this time. He said, I know Curtis. He's law and order. I know Andrew Cuomo, who's led to this crime problem in New York State, New York City, with no cash bail, and then he listed it all. So when you have people like Dov Hikind, George Pataki, and of course, the greatest mayor in our lifetime, Rudy Giuliani, Mr. Law and Order, all of them backing me, you're veterans. You've lived with Andrew Cuomo. You've experienced that. And now you've seen the rise of somebody that his own neighbors didn't know a year ago, Zohran Mamdani, to become infamous internationally to some and famous to others.
Yeah, let me make it clear to everybody out there. Mamdani is not a done deal. Far from it. You know, everybody's like an expert. Oh, you know, I think Mamdani has it. I think he doesn't have it. Curtis, I like him, but I don't think he can win. Cuomo, I hate him. I can't stand him. I don't trust him. I'm going to vote for him. You ever hear something like that? Something so bizarre? You know, a man who has undermined our community and a man who's responsible for a lot of our problems. His name is Cuomo. You can't trust the guy. Okay, that's the bottom line. Whatever he says to you, you can't trust him. He apologizes before the Day of Atonement. 2 days later, he tells a secular media reporter, no, I didn't mean that apology. I still would have done exactly what I did during COVID. I mean, you got a grandfather, grandmother. How many grandfathers and grandmothers that Cuomo is responsible for their death by sending them to nursing homes, for God's sake? The crime wave we have, cashless bail. Who signed it? Look at the legislation. It says Andrew Cuomo. He was the governor. He's responsible, period. And for those who care about Israel, look, this is not about Israel. It's about everything. It's about the future of New York. But look at the issue of Israel just for a second with Cuomo. He was going to be one of the lawyers for Bibi Netanyahu, you know, at the ICC. You know, I'm going to defend him, right? More recently, what did he do? It was politically correct to attack Bibi Netanyahu. That's what he did. And he will sell you out. Don't trust him.
Dov, he said, I never stood with Bibi. And all these pictures came out and videos. I remember Alan Dershowitz saying, we are proud to have on our legal team defending Bibi from the international court, Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah. Is that?
And then all of a sudden,
what? This just happened like a couple of weeks ago. We don't even have to go back to COVID. We don't have to go back to anything. You cannot trust him. I know him. You cannot trust him. So everyone out there, your friends, your neighbors, if you're a Republican, come home, for God's sake. Come home. Come home to your party, to an amazing candidate, moderates, others, people who care. This year, there's no Republican or Democrat or anything else. It's about the future of New York. Curtis, it's a pleasure,
well,
really.
Thank you, more importantly, for your friendship, your support, your guidance, your mentorship, and accepting my human failings from time to time, which we all have.
You know, when someone says they're sorry, and you know, I did it this afternoon with my wife.
Oh.
I drove home from the country. I was away speaking. In fact, spoke about you. The subject was the race for mayor. And I felt, you know, little, and I drove a little to, you know, where she got, you know, I had to apologize like for a half hour.
Sure.
Half hour.
Join the club, though.
Join the club, exactly. Anyway, everyone out there, you know, we'll be doing the show a couple more times before the election, and it's great to have Curtis. And again, It's not just about you voting for Curtis. Get your friends, your neighbors. Stop the kvetching. Stop trying to figure out what's going to happen. By the way, God plays a role too. Do the right thing. Support the person you really care about, that you trust, that you've watched all your life. Period. End of the story. God bless you all.